Okay, so just to warn y'all, I recorded this entire video before all of this Terron Payne stuff. So this is future Rico talking to you now. Ignore everything Terron Payne related in this upcoming video. Appreciate it. Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and what are we doing, Commanders? What are we doing? Don't start falling behind now. The Washington Commanders must find ways to restructure current contracts that are on the team right now. There's no excuses. I have so many examples of other teams creating cap space so that they can make moves in the upcoming free agency and things like that. You see teams making crazy trades. I mean, Jalen Ramsey going for a random tight end and a third-round pick. Now, granted, the Dolphins do have to pay him quite a bit of money, but it's not a lot, and they don't even have to pay him immediately. He has 2 years remaining on his deal. He's not a free agent until 2025, I believe. I know Ron Rivera, just in general, is pretty passive, doesn't do a lot in free agency, usually bargain bin shopping, at best looking for tier 2 guys and things like that. And I know Dan Snyder and them folks over there playing chicken, and I don't know what they're doing. So I know with all of that going on, with potential new ownership coming in, we don't want to spend too much money with the previous regime and set the new regime up for failure and end up having guys that they don't want and not having money that they would have wanted to make their own moves and things like that. But still, man, there's no excuse. Especially, like, we shouldn't be worried about paying Terron Payne long term when you can restructure contracts the way that these other teams have done it. We're going to take a look at all of these restructures that are going on around the league, especially the significant ones, and then of course, after that, we're going to take a look at some of the restructure candidates that we have on the team. We're going to take a look at the top 12 guys eating up cap space on the Commanders roster currently, and which contracts we could potentially restructure, and potentially for how much. Again, there's just no excuse. When you see the way that some of these teams found a way to create cap space, it's literally no excuse. But there's also positives and negatives, so we're going to discuss that as well and talk about why the Commanders may not want to restructure guys' contracts. It's not just an obvious yes, but I still vote yes. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get a notification immediately, and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you pull up every Sunday for the Commanders live stream. I have so many videos I need to work on, so I'm gonna see if I'm gonna be able to do one today. But make sure you stay tuned, because I'll probably live stream midweek this upcoming week, especially if anything crazy significant happens with free agency and things like that. So stay tuned. Anything free agency, I'm gonna have y'all updated on it. I'm working on film sessions for a lot of draft prospects. I have a lot of mock drafts still coming out. Anything draft, anything off season, I got y'all, man. So stay tuned, and without further ado, let's get it. Alright, so let's start with some of the bigger ones, the more exciting ones. Well, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers found a way to restructure the contracts of Vita Vea, Carlton Davis, Ryan Jensen, and Chris Godwin to create $44 million worth of cap space in 2023. Now, granted, a lot of these teams are maneuvering contracts so that they can get into the legal amount of cap space. Like, a lot of these teams were in the negatives, and they literally, like, had to do this. That's why you see the Rams trading away all of their players, the Titans releasing all of their players. These teams, like, literally had to make something shake to be able to get out of the negative in cap space before the new league year starts, which is Wednesday. But the tampering period starts tomorrow, so things are about to start getting really crazy. That's why things are already heating up today. Wouldn't be surprised if Aaron Rodgers gets traded today officially to the Jets. You saw Ramsey already go to the Dolphins, like I already spoke on a little bit, and so things are heating up. It's time to make moves. So again, the Buccaneers restructured the contracts of 4 of their players and created $44 million worth of cap space. You know what the Commanders could do with $44 million right now? Matter of fact, Buccaneers, let us hold that for a minute. Just real quick. We'll pay you back. We good for it. And then you have the Cowboys, and they did a monstrous restructure, because between quarterback Dak Prescott and guard Zack Martin, they restructured their contracts to where they saved $30 million against the cap this 2023 season. $30 million. Now, granted, it's one of the negatives of doing that. You just end up pushing a lot of that money on the back end. That's one of the negatives. There's other negatives. Again, we're going to talk about it a little later before we dive into the potential contracts and players that we can restructure on the Commanders. But because of the strategy that they're doing, because of the restructures that they made, Dak Prescott's cap hit for the 2024 season as of right now will be $59 million just that year alone. That is insane. Roughly $5 million more than what Deshaun Watson is scheduled to be a cap hit for the Cleveland Browns this season, 2023. Again, because you're pushing a lot of that money that you saved this season onto next season. You're gonna have to pay it at some point. So there go the Cowboys doing that. Then you have the Miami Dolphins, man. The Miami Dolphins just went from $16 million in the negative to $30 million in the positive, man. As of March 10th, the Dolphins moved $48.99 million in contract restructures, the league's highest mark. I mean, they got busy. They restructured Bradley Chubb, Terron Armstead, and Tyreek Hill to create almost $50 million worth of cap space. And that's what's helped them to be able to acquire Jalen Ramsey. I mean, the good teams just keep getting better because they're more aggressive. I mean, the Rams are sorry now, but I'm pretty sure that they're happy that they got that Super Bowl in a couple of years ago. I feel like it was well worth it. I prefer to be great and win a Super Bowl one year and be terrible the next rather than being a consistent 7-8 win team forever, perpetually. That's worst case scenario in sports to me. To be constantly almost there but never there, I'd way more prefer to do what the Rams did, go all in on the Super Bowl, get it, and then be potentially sorry for the next couple of years, rather than just being this average that the Commanders are. And shouts out to the Miami Dolphins because it looks like they're doing something somewhat similar, but they're not going all the way in. They still have a lot of their draft picks. The only reason they don't have a first-round draft pick this upcoming 2023 draft is because of the whole Brian Flores and all of that type of stuff that went down. But it's not like they traded it away to get this great team. This team is great regardless. Moving on, the Chargers restructured Keenan Allen's deal to clear up almost $9 million worth of cap space. And he's staying in LA, because there were thoughts that he may end up leaving. If they would have cut him, they would have saved $15 million, but they preferred to restructure his contract to end up keeping him and saving $9 million. How about we get creative like that? Then you got the Jets restructuring the contracts of Laken Tomlinson, DJ Reed, and tight end CJ Uzomah to create $15.2 million worth of cap space. Looks like they're trying to clear the way to be able to bring in Aaron Rodgers if they really plan on doing so, and it looks like they really are. It looks like there's real momentum behind that. Then you got the Raiders over here restructuring Maxx Crosby's contract to create $7.5375 million worth of cap space, and they basically played around with this roster bonus to do it. His roster bonus is already guaranteed and now will be earned within just a few days. And the Raiders already have a lot of cap space. They just wanted to get more. I'm not exactly sure why, but we'll see. Then you have the Saints. They restructured the contracts of linebacker Demario Davis and tight end Tayson Hill to create $12.724 million worth of cap space in 2023. You remember Taysom Hill had all of them void years and his stuff, so his contract is weird and crazy, and then they just messed with it again to create more cap space this upcoming season. They got Derek Carr. Maybe they're going to be aggressive in free agency to bring some more talent around Derek Carr so that they could try to be a real contender in the NFC. I mean, the NFC South is pretty sorry, so I don't necessarily see them being better than like the Eagles and the 49ers and things like that, but they could easily be better than the rest of the NFC South. And it looks like the Saints are like, well, let's go ahead and win this division at the very least and keep it pushing. We'll figure it out after that. Then you got the Packers, who's probably going to lose a lot of Aaron Rodgers' contract and is going to get a lot of cap space back for that, but they also restructured left tackle David Bakhtiari's contract, converting his March roster bonus and a large portion of his 2023 base salary into a $15.035 million signing bonus. And with this restructure, they saved around $7.5 million worth of cap space. So that's what they just gained from doing that, converting a roster bonus into a signing bonus. Not exactly sure why we're not doing that, but again, there's a reason. We're going to talk about that soon. I would do it, but I can see why Dan Snyder wouldn't. Then you have the Arizona Cardinals as well. They restructured DJ Humphrey's contract, and it's going to save them $5 million worth of cap space this upcoming offseason. Then you have the Buffalo Bills. Very small amount, but still, they restructured our boy Tim Settle to create about $600,000 worth of cap space. It can even be little things like that, so really nobody's safe. I mean, there's just so many ways you could do it with the void years, converting roster bonus into signing bonus, moving a lot of cap hits into other years like how Dallas did, making Dak Prescott a $59 million cap hit in 2024, but that's not a 2023 problem right now. There's so many ways you can go about it. And just to give y'all the highest amounts of cap space gained from restructures this offseason just alone, you have the Dolphins #1 with $49 million, the Saints with 49 million, the Jaguars with 45 million, the Packers with 33, the Chargers with 28, and the Panthers with 27. These teams are not playing, y'all. Commanders don't fall behind. Y'all better get on it, man. And so now let's get into why the Commanders probably won't do this before we get to all of the potential restructures that I want us to get into. Again, I don't exactly understand the science behind it yet, and just based on how the Commanders go about business, maybe they don't either, because these other teams are doing it and getting away with it all of the time. If you really want certain players, you can find a way to get them and keep them, as far as Deron Payne and all of these guys go. But one reason, like I alluded to earlier with Dan Snyder, that we more than likely won't do things like this is because that roster bonus, the signing bonus, means that Dan Snyder will have to pay that out of pocket like right now. And he's already being petty with everybody, with Jeff Bezos, with the fan base, with everybody. He's basically like F y'all to literally everybody but his own family right now. So he's probably looking like, well, I'm about to sell the team anyway. Why would I do y'all any favors? Why don't I keep as much money as I potentially can? He's already in debt for several different reasons in several different ways. So what does he look like restructuring somebody's contract? And it helps the Commanders in every way possible, converting a roster bonus to a signing bonus. But he's the one that's got to write the check. And it's literally coming from his pockets. So that's one of the main reasons why we more than likely will not be restructuring contracts, because Dan Snyder sucks. Also, again, just like with the Cowboys situation, now you could extend people rather than just restructuring. If you extend them, they'll cost less money per year, but ultimately they will still end up getting the amount of money that they wanted, maybe even a little bit more, and that's like a win-win. That's a way that we can go about it. But if you're just doing a simple restructure where you're not extending their contract, like how the Cowboys did with Dak Prescott, there's the obvious negative of him being a $59 million cap hit next season, the 2024 season. So that's more than likely why we will not do any restructures, especially one that significant, because Rivera is clearly looking towards the future. Just brought in a new offensive coordinator, has Sam Howell technically going into his redshirt freshman season. So it's not like we're necessarily in win now mode exactly. I mean, the standard is set for him. It's playoffs or bust. It's really playoffs or fire for him ultimately, but we're not like it's Super Bowl or bust like a lot of these teams out here. And so there's still a little element of building towards the future on this team. So why put us in the hole for that much negative? I mean, again, it wouldn't be anywhere near that bad because we don't even have a contract that big on our roster. But that may be why they're avoiding that similar strategy that the Cowboys did, where you move a lot of the cap hit from 2023 and move it on to 2024 and figure it out later. But I mean, what's stopping a team from constantly delaying it over and over again? When Dak Prescott's contract comes up hitting for $59 million in 2024, what stops them from moving a little bit of that to 2025? So I don't know. Again, I don't know contracts that well, but from based on what I do know for sure, I'm reporting on that. And also brainstorming and thinking out loud more so than anything else. Now, off rip, some of the contracts I think we should immediately attempt to restructure, and it should be done, are Logan Thomas and Chase Roullier. Logan Thomas looks like a shell of himself, and he struggles with health as well. And then Chase Roullier hasn't given us a full game season, I don't think, ever. I don't even remember the last time he at least played half a season or a little bit over half as a starting center in the NFL. So you may not need to hit them with the ultimatum, take a restructure or get cut like we did with Landon Collins, but they definitely need to be strong restructure candidates, because Chase Roullier right now is hitting up $12 million worth of our cap space this season alone. And if he only ends up playing an estimated, say, 7-8 games this season like he usually has the past couple of years, then that man is getting paid more than $1 million per game, and that's just ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. So if we can restructure his contract and then somehow get that $12.4 million cap hit down to, like, say 4 and create like $8 million, do it. Find a way. If you got to convert some roster bonus to signing bonus, convince Dan Snyder, whatever you got to do, man. And then Logan Thomas, again, like we spoke about, he's an $8.675 million cap hit this season alone. Based on what we saw last year, imagining Logan Thomas taking up almost $9 million worth of cap space this upcoming season just sounds insane to me. So you got to restructure him. Cutting him, though, could make sense, because if you cut him, he's only going to be a $3.5 million cap hit in dead cap. So that saves you a little over $5 million worth of cap space if he doesn't want to take a restructure restructure, you can at least recoup $5 million by cutting him. Chase Roullier, on the other hand, cutting him doesn't make a lot of sense because, granted, you would save $4 million, but to cut somebody who's a $12.4 million cap hit as a starting center, technically, even though he's only plays half the season, and he's still going to end up being an $8 million dead cap. $8 million worth of dead cap just sounds crazy no matter what the reason you did it for. So I think he's less likely to get cut, but Chase Roullier and Logan Thomas are not safe. The main thing saving them, though, is that we don't have a certified starting center that we know we have on roster right now. Now, maybe post June 1st, we cut them if we take one in the draft that we know for a fact is ready to start. Like we get into rookie mini camps, OTAs, and things like that, and we see something in a starting center, a rookie starting center, then maybe you cut Chase Roullier at that point. But you don't want to create another need when we already have other needs that we're trying to figure out, like linebacker, offensive line everywhere, tight end. Going back to Logan Thomas, you cut Logan Thomas, that's even less of a floor that we have in the tight end group. I love the potential and the ceiling of Armani Rogers, Curtis Hodges, Cole Turner, but really the only floor we have in the tight end room right now are John Bates and Logan Thomas. Now, granted, Logan Thomas's floor and ceiling look quite low based on what we saw last year, but you cut him, the problem only technically gets worse. But at the same time, man, this man is eating up almost $9 million worth of cap space. You could try to find somebody else in free agency that costs less than that if he's not willing to take a restructure. And then also, Jonathan Allen, you can maybe find a way. He's our biggest cap hit at $21 million, over $21 million just this year alone. You may be able to find a way to restructure that to where he's taking up less cap space and save you some good $1 million. Curtis Samuel, even though it wasn't necessarily his fault, but last year it wasn't a very productive year. He's eating up $13 million worth of cap space. You could probably find a way to restructure that. Charles Leno disappointed us in a lot of ways. He's eating up $12.5 million worth of cap space, and if you cut him, you save $8 million. You create $8 million worth of cap space because he's only a $4.5 million dead cap hit right now. But again, you cut Charles Leno, that's another problem you have. That's another weakness on your team that you're just adding to the already relatively long list of weaknesses that and holes on the team that we already have. So I doubt it happens, but if you can find a way to get Charles Leno to agree to a restructure, maybe you can. And remember, Logan Thomas agreed to his first restructure and pay cut, and then after the whole Carson Wentz thing, which makes the Carson Wentz trade look even worse, even beyond the draft picks we gave up, even beyond the waste of a season that we had and all of the wasted potential, we should have made the playoffs and all of that type of stuff. Remember, we asked Logan Thomas to take a pay cut and restructure his contract once. He agreed. Then after the Carson Wentz situation, we asked him to do it again, and then he was like, all right, now y'all just playing with me. And then that's when he decided to leave, like, just cut me type of thing. So remember, Carson Wentz was the reason that we didn't end up having Landon Collins last year. But I'm saying all of that to say that even Landon Collins, who a lot of people didn't think would agree to a restructure, ultimately did the first time. So you never know. Kendall Fuller's eating up $11.6 million worth of cap space. Maybe you can restructure that. Montez Sweat eating up $11.5 million worth of cap space. Terry McLaurin eating up 11. Chase Young eating up 11, slightly less than Terry McLaurin. Andrew Norwell, I'm not even sure if he's going to even be on this team. We'll probably just end up cutting him. He's a $5 million cap hit, and then he'll end up leaving us with $2.8 million worth of dead cap. So we would save around $2.2 million cutting him. But if you may want to restructure him, if for some reason you want to keep him, Cornelius Lucas eating up $4.3 million worth of cap space. You cut him, only $900,000 worth of dead cap. You save $3.4 million. But you can end up restructuring him if you want to keep him as a backup swing tackle. And those are just the top 12 cap space eaters on our team. We can go further and further down the list if you really wanted to. And then also, don't forget, if you give Daron Payne a long-term deal, he's eating up almost $19 million worth of cap space on the franchise tag right now. But there's a way you could potentially pay him long term, give him more money ultimately than that $19 million he's making this year, but do it in a way to where he's taking up less than that $19 million worth of cap space for the Commanders this year. There's a win-win in all of this if we really want to dive into it. But again, not very optimistic that the Commanders do that type of stuff, but there's options. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Let me know how you feel about all of these other teams finding a way to finesse cap space and the Commanders just haven't done it yet. Are you optimistic that the Commanders will find a way to get it done? Do you think we'll ultimately end up keeping Daron Payne, Cameron Curl, Cole Holcomb long term and end up finding ways to restructure contracts, things like that? Let me know how you feel about this upcoming free agency. Do you think the Commanders are even going to try to be even somewhat aggressive. And of course, man, I appreciate all the support, man. Leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. And shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors, whose name you see scrolling on the screen right now. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out. Whoa. Scratch everything I just said about Terron Payne, because apparently we just went ahead and gave him a deal. I'm about to record that video right now.